Hey content creators, would you like to have great sounding, loud, clear, articulate, punchy audio for your videos or your podcasts? Well, if so, stay tuned because that's what this episode is all about. The thing that inspired this episode is I recently came across a really cool free utility that can do audio processing that will process your audio files and give you an output that is ready for production. It takes care of all of the normalization, the limiting, the compression, everything, and gives you a perfectly formatted and processed file to drop into your project to give you that loud, clean, clear audio that makes your production stand up above the rest. And before we get into that, let's talk about how to get good audio, because you need good quality recordings in order to do the processing on to get a good result. Now, I've been doing these videos for a little while, and if you've watched my prior videos, you've probably seen some changes in production from one episode to another because I'm always mixing it up. One of the things I find interesting is trying different pieces of equipment, trying different techniques, and seeing what works. And sometimes I have success, and sometimes, well, I learn what not to do. Hey, if you're interested in this sort of content and you enjoy these kind of videos, I hope you've subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to do so by clicking the subscribe button down below. And if you do that, I'd also suggest that you click that bell icon so you get notified when new content drops. Okay, so in order to get really good quality audio, you need to get a good pickup with your microphone. And we've probably all seen videos where people have used the built-in microphones that are on their camera for their audio pickup. And for me, that just doesn't work very well because the mics are just simply too far away. The mics on my camera are actually not bad sounding mics, but when they're 6 or 8 feet away, they're going to sound like they're 6 or 8 feet away. And so microphones that are built into the camera, or even microphones that are attached to the camera, for me are just a no-go. You need an external microphone if you want to get clean and clear sound pickup. Now there's a number of choices that you can pursue for that. You could get a lavalier mic, one of those little tiny clip-on mics that you can put on your collar, and they work pretty well. The trouble with the lavaliers for me is I'm always concerned about that microphone scuffing against my clothing and picking up those extraneous sounds, and that wouldn't be so good. And it also means that I've got a cable attached to me, which limits my mobility somewhat. But lavalier mic, in many circumstances, works pretty well, and it's relatively inconspicuous. The thing that probably works best is to actually have a microphone right next to you, like I do here. And for me, I don't mind seeing the microphone in my video shot. Some people think that's a poor aesthetic, and so they'll put the microphone just outside a frame on a boom pole, and that works pretty well too, as long as the microphone is close to you. In a lot of my earlier videos, I would take the output of the microphone and put it into my camera and record the audio on the camera. And that's super convenient when it comes time to doing your video editing and processing, because the audio track and the video track are automatically synchronized with each other. However, in my experience with the cameras that I have, and I've tried more than one, I could never get good results doing that. I tried all sorts of different adapters between the microphone and the camera, and I never achieved the results I was really looking for. Some of the adapters, like my Juice Link adapter, which takes XLR balanced microphone input and has a output that is designed to feed a camera, actually works pretty well, but still it wasn't good enough for me. And that's because the preamplifiers that are in the camera for taking in audio just don't have low enough noise. Every time I use the camera audio track, I get a little bit of background hiss. And it didn't seem to make any difference just what signal I applied to the camera at what level or anything like that. There was just always a small amount of hiss in the background that was really difficult to overcome. Now, I was able to get usable results, but not results that I was really content with. And so that drove me to doing separate recording of the video and the audio. And in order to do processing with this utility that I'm going to talk about here in just a second, this method makes that a whole lot easier. And so I get the camera rolling, I get the audio recorder rolling, and then I need to get these tracks synced up together when they're both imported into the editor afterwards. And the easy way to do that is to put a transient spike at the beginning of your production. And so you can just clap your hands, or if you're an old-time Hollywood movie person, you probably have a clapper board. I use a switch that just goes click, like so. And so what that will do is when you're looking at your audio waveforms in your editor, you'll see a very brief spike where that click occurred, and you can line up the spike and the audio track that comes out of the camera from its built-in mics and the audio track that you're recording separately, and get those two lined up in time, and then your audio and your video will be nicely in sync. And after I do that, I can mute the track that comes off of the camera because those mics are not picking up a really good sound quality. And I can mix in the audio track that I recorded separately and get good audio on the video. And now normally what I would do is in the editor, I would go through a process of applying some tools to the audio track, such as I would normalize the track, which would raise the gain of the track or lower it, so that the loudest sounds are just touching 0 dB, which is my maximum level that I can run. And then after that, you might apply some limiting to take care of any really brief transients, and some compression in order to try to reduce the dynamic range a little bit. So the loud sounds are brought down a little bit and the quiet sounds are brought up a little bit, giving you nice, clean, clear, loud, consistent volume throughout your production. And then maybe a little equalization if I don't like the tone. But I found a tool that does all of that processing in one step. And so with this tool, what I do is I take the audio track out of the separate audio recorder, I run it through this tool, and then that yields a new file, which is completely processed, and then I take that new file and put that into the video editor for the production. And then I don't have to do any additional processing inside of the video editor, except for maybe a little equalization if I feel the need. Now this tool is based on ffmpeg. ffmpeg is a free utility that's been around for an awfully long time, and it's sort of the Swiss Army knife of video and editing processing. It can do all sorts of different transformations of video and audio, and it is a command line tool. So you sit at a prompt and you type in, the input file name and the output file name and any, parameter switches to do the processing you want to do, and then it takes a moment or so and it outputs a new file. So it's not super convenient, especially for a non-computer techie, but it's a super powerful utility and it's completely free to use. ffmpeg has the ability to do audio normalization processing, which is to process the file so that it's consistently loud. But it requires a fair amount of tweaking in order to get that processing to work just correctly. And in order to do it, it requires 2 passes of the utility. To do it most effectively, it requires 2 passes of the utility. The first pass just analyzes the file to tell you what the peak and average volume levels are and such. And then knowing that information, you can do a second pass to have it actually process the file based upon its current status to create an output file that works nice. So, great tool, but a little bit tedious. So there's a companion program that I recently found, which has been around a while, which is also free to use, called winloud. And winloud is just a graphical front end to the ffmpeg tool for doing this audio processing. So you need to get a copy of ffmpeg, and in the same folder put in the winloud utility, And then when you run winloud, it's a standard graphical Microsoft Windows program that you can drag your audio file into, one button click, and it will do all of the processing necessary to give you a properly processed file that will work great with your productions. And there are some parameters in winloud, so you can adjust how aggressively it behaves, but it's super easy to control, and it produces good output. Previously, when I was doing all of this work inside of the video editor, there's a lot of parameters that you have to tweak with for your limiting and compression, the attack and decay rates and ratios and all of this stuff. And if you don't get those parameters correct, you either won't have adequate processing on your file, or else your file will come through sounding overly processed, squished, or your audience may be able to hear the artifacts of the processing as it's cranking the gains up and down and so forth. With the ffmpeg tool and winloud, as long as you tell it to not be ridiculously aggressive, it does a great job of processing the file and having the output sound loud and punchy and clear and articulate, but still natural. And so I think it's a great tool, and I've used it on this video so you can get an example as to how it works. And I've got the compression set pretty aggressively, so it should be keeping the levels in this video up pretty high throughout the whole video. And so you can hear what the results are. If you're interested in a copy of this tool, check the description down underneath this video, and I'll provide links to where you can grab a copy of ffmpeg and winloud. And if you choose to use it and have good results or not so good results, maybe you can share your feedback in the comments as to how well it works or doesn't work for you. But I thought it was a great utility. I thought it made creating these videos a whole lot easier, because now with basically one click I can get consistent audio processing without all the tweaking. And I appreciate you tuning in and stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon on another episode